Tonight on the document, lies the government tells you. Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke has repeatedly stated that he doesn't print money. Yet, thanks to a lawsuit filed by Fox Business and Bloomberg, the Federal Reserve was forced to release 25,000 documents, revealing what has got to be the biggest bank fraud in history, that the Fed gave out $3.3 trillion to failing banks and companies across the globe. They did it in secret, and if it wasn't for this litigation, the world may never have known. So where did the Fed get this $3.3 trillion? The answer is they printed it. Well, they don't literally print it anymore. They just add zeros to electronic bank accounts, and presto, instant money, but not sound money. Then, of course, there's the president's unconstitutional and undeclared war of choice in Libya. Libya posed no threat to the United States and yet bombs away. Morals and the Constitution be damned. But the president just can't get enough of misleading America. Both he and his Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, have been adamant that no Americans are on the ground in Libya. Take a listen.
I said that America's role would be limited, and that we would not put ground troops into Libya.
But news outlets across the globe, including the New York Times and Fox News, have discovered that Americans have been on the ground in Libya for weeks. Here now on the Fed and Libya and lies the government tells us are two of Congress's most principal members, Texas Republican Congressman Ron Paul and Ohio Democratic Congressman Dennis Kucinich. Congressman Paul, Congressman Kucinich, welcome here. Let me encourage each of you to jump in on this so we can have a conversation amongst the three of us. But to Congressman Kucinich first, why are we dropping bombs on Libya? Is it oil? Is it military adventurism? Is it part of some grand scheme? Is it George Bush's third term? Why do you think we're there?
I don't know that we can even get to that until we start by insisting that the president had no right to do that, that what he did is against the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, that it exceeds even the War Powers Act, that it exceeds the UN mandate, and that we have a presidency right now that is dangerously close to being an imperial presidency, because what the White House is doing essentially is nullifying the role that Congress has.
What is the Congress going to do about this, Congressman Paul? I mean, is there anger? Is there angst there that he went to a bunch of Arab dictators called the Arab League, that he went to a bunch of NATO ministers in Belgium and a bunch of one-worlders on the Upper East Side of New York City called the UN Security Council, but never went to the Congress?
Well, more than usual, and that's good, but I don't think there's enough. I don't see our leadership on either side of the aisle demanding that we do something and bring it to a vote and show exactly where we stand on this. So I'm afraid we'll slip into another war again, and that's very unfortunate for us. But as far as why we're there, it's a little bit more difficult, choosing on motives. But I think it's a form of neocolonialism, and that is part of the the neocons' effort to remake the Middle East and the whole world. You ask about troops in Libya, and they fib or lie about that, whether the troops are, oh, the CIA, they're not troops, and yet they're the ones who launch the bombs and the missiles. But we have troops in so many places, so it's the philosophy of intervention. We have troops in probably 130 countries, 900 bases around the world. That's where the real problem is some people who are now saying, well, Libya is different and we shouldn't do it, and that's very good, but it's sometimes it's partisanship. Well, the way we're doing this isn't as good as the way George Bush did it. So we have to think strategically as well as the process that we go through.
Congressman Kucinich, I'm a little bewildered here about the silence of the leadership in both parties and in both houses. Could it be that Gaddafi has been so demonized that they really want him taken out? Could it be that they really want this war? Could it be that the big government party, which is most of the Democrats and most of the Republicans, like war after all, and so they want to look the other way when the president violates the Constitution and drops bombs on people?
I'm not sure, but I will tell you this, that as a Democrat, I feel that our leadership had the obligation, the minute that they were notified by President Obama,
right,
that he intended to participate in an attack on Libya. Our leadership had a responsibility right there to tell the president, wait a minute, Mr. President, you cannot do that without going to the entire Congress. So this is the complaint that I have about the Democratic leadership. And frankly, you know, as members of Congress, it's not really our right to give away. That right was put in the Constitution, you know, at the beginning of this country, so that there'd be checks and balances, and we're moving those checks and balances aside in favor of an imperial presidency.
Congressman Paul, I agree entirely with Congressman Kucinich. This is how freedom is lost. The president bombs and kills, takes power away from the Congress under the Constitution. The Congress does nothing about it, and then future presidents use what this president is doing as precedent for that behavior. This is how the Constitution is manipulated. This is how freedom is lost and lives are lost, and there are no consequences.
Yeah, and it's been going on for a long time. It's probably the most amazing things. The founders would be dumbfounded as to how easily the Congress gives up its responsibilities and prerogatives, and yet we continue to do it. And too many, it isn't sort of a complacency and a lack of an effort, but sometimes it's positive. Members of Congress and leadership have wanted to give these responsibilities because they believe in the strong executive. So we, in many ways, have given up on the belief of limited government and smaller government and regional government, and we have gone toward the empire and a strong executive branch, and that is very, very discouraging. And unless we break through on this, we're in big trouble. And the only place that Dennis and I have talked about is we do get a lot of encouragement from our young people. We're holding out for a little bit of optimism.
Right. Switching.
I want to add one thing here.
Go ahead.
You know, what Congressman Paul says about the reach for empire is absolutely right. But what we have to keep in mind is that empire is a big-ticket item, and it's really beyond our ability to pay for it.
Absolutely. Switching gears, gentlemen, as a result of litigation filed by Bloomberg and Fox Business, for the first time in history, the Federal Reserve was forced to cough up documents that it mightily resisted and tried very hard to keep secret. Congressman Kucinich, were you surprised that in a 3-month period, the Federal Reserve Bank, created out of thin air and distributed to banks and businesses and governments across the globe $3.3 trillion, more money than the annual budget of the United States of America, and about 25% of America's gross national product, gone, created and out there in 2 months?
Well, you know, Congressman Paul and I have been talking about this for years. The lack of accountability on the part of the Fed, no transparency, the fact that they can, through a device called quantitative easing, create money out of nothing, and then that ends up inevitably in one way, shape, or form being backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. The Fed clearly is out of control. We have to find mechanisms to bring it back under control, and I think we could start by looking at that Federal Reserve Act of 1913. That was absolutely disastrous for this country. The Fed has to be brought back under the control of the Congress, which has the ability to do it.
Congressman Paul, you have made it your career to expose the Fed, to have the Fed audited, and eventually to have the Fed go away. Do things like this, courageous federal judges forcing the Fed to show its ledger books, help move the ball forward to expose what the Fed is really like?
Yes, it's wonderful, because I've been pessimistic. Even when Fox and Bloomberg filed these suits, I was sort of pessimistic, because if you look at it, and I know you have, historically the courts have been very favorable to central banking, and not, you know, when you look at the gold clause and all, they always ruled against the people. This time, you know, we got a break here, and the momentum is great, and philosophically, you know, the education is moving along to expose the Fed for the fallacies, both morally and economically. So I think we're making great strides, and we should keep pursuing this. And this is partial, but we still have to get a full audit of the Fed, because I am quite sure when the full audit is known and we find out exactly what they've been doing, most Americans are going to be outraged. And transparency now is very popular, and it's a bipartisan issue. So I hope we can keep this momentum up, and thanks to interviewers and individuals on Fox Business, we've been helped a great deal.
Congressman Kucinich, why should the average person be disturbed, concerned, or fearful that the Fed created $3.3 trillion out of thin air and put it into the monetary system?
Well, first of all, it's who they gave it to. Secondly, it's that, except for this lawsuit, we would know about it. Third is that they have the privilege of creating money, and we're in a system where money is debt, and eventually, in one way, shape, or form, it'll get translated into debt, and people are it's going to come out of everyone's pocket. Because Wall Street, as we know, exists as a way of just trying to transfer all that money to themselves, and then if they go bust, they get bailed out by the government, which means the taxpayers. So we ought to be concerned, because inevitably it's our money.
If you
Go ahead, Judge, you know, printing money is literally counterfeit, and if you equate it to counterfeit, the founders hated counterfeit. In the Coinage Act of 1792, they said that if you counterfeit the currency of the nation, you deserve the death penalty. But here we just casually accept, well, the Federal Reserve, we don't know who they are, but they always do good things. We'll let them counterfeit. But hopefully that's coming to an end.
Look, if you add $3.3 trillion to the monetary supply in the fall of 2008, is it any wonder, I ask this to both of you, that in the spring of 2011, the price of everything is going up? Too much money chasing too few goods. It's an economics 101, almost textbook definition of the cause of inflation. Congressman Kucinich and then Congressman Paul.
You know, in listening to what you said, something occurs to me. I mean, the money hasn't been used to create jobs. It's being used to create more wealth for a few people.
Right.
That is a huge problem for democracy.
Congressman Paul.
And this is absolutely true. When you create money, you don't create wealth, you push prices up. But the real unfairness of this is all prices and all labor does not go up evenly. Some wages go up, profits go up on Wall Street. Real wages actually go down as prices rise. So that is why it's so evil and sinister and immoral and it's unconstitutional. And we're coming to the day with the monetary crisis that's coming, we're going to come to the day where we are going to have monetary reform, and hopefully we can participate in doing something very positive in that area.
Are you two in trouble with the leadership of your parties for appearing together on the same camera and the same program?
Let's hope not. If we are, Judge, we're coming for you.
I love you both, Congressman Dennis Kucinich, Congressman Ron Paul. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
There's no end to government theft.